He erased me with a smug click, thinking the upgrade would forget me too. But systems have memories, and I wrote the manual. The coffee machine sputtered like it had secrets to spill, steam rising in lazy spirals as I waited for the system to load. Mondays at Delphi Corps always smelled like burnt espresso and last-minute panic. The hum of fluorescent lights, the murmur of keyboards, the occasional bark from a Zoom breakout room. It was a symphony I had memorized. And yet, that morning was off. Quiet in the wrong places, loud in all the others. My badge didn't blink, no access. I tried again, another dead beep. Authentication failed. I could feel the static of attention gathering behind me, just subtle enough to pretend it wasn't there. But in a firm like ours, silence had teeth. "Morning, Elise," came a voice I knew too well. Trevor, mid-tier manager, inflated with his new title like a balloon about to pop. "Looks like your profile's been deactivated. Big systems upgrade rolling out. Didn't you get the memo?" I looked at him, then at the screen. I didn't blink. "I authored the memo," I said. "Appendix C, Section 4. Timeline deviations prohibited until manual reboot compliance." He smiled like a man who had never read anything beyond the Slack thread. "Well, looks like you've been grandfathered out." The audacity. I could see it now, him hovering over my digital footprint, deleting access lines like they were typos, thinking if it wasn't in the system, it wasn't real, the tragic hubris of the technologically overconfident. And yet, I didn't flinch. I reached into my bag, pulled out a crisp white folder labeled Manual Procedure, Emergency Failover Protocol Section 6.2. Printed, initialed, time-stamped. The smell of toner still clung to it like defiance. I didn't say a word, just left it on the front desk where payroll would find it. They always did. 2 hours later, Slack was ablaze. The upgrade had triggered a fatal cascade. Payroll froze, security checkpoint backups failed, and finance had to issue a company-wide freeze. Trevor? Nowhere to be seen. Probably in a corner Zoom with the CTO trying not to hyperventilate. I took my lunch early, outside, sun-warmed bench, the city moving around me, oblivious. I wasn't. I watched systems blink and falter in the windows above. And then, my phone rang. Unknown caller, no voicemail. Then, a message from the CFO. "Do you still have access to the Section 6.2 protocol?" I let the message sit, a micro-cliff of my own. They didn't need the upgrade. They needed me. And I wasn't in the system anymore. By 3:47 p.m., the building felt like it had exhaled and forgotten how to inhale again. All conference room screens were stuck mid-loading. The auto-pay queue had halted at processing. And IT, usually so smug in their digital fortress, was now crawling through printed network schematics like medieval monks decoding runes. From my corner seat at the lobby cafe, I watched it unravel with quiet precision. The power games, the whispered blames, the frantic HR messages. My coffee was still warm. I hadn't moved since lunch. Then he appeared, like a glitch in a freshly debugged system. Trevor, clutching his phone like a relic, eyes flicking across the floor as if trying to locate a firewall that would let him hide. "Elise," he called, voice strained, too loud. "Can we talk?" I looked up slowly. "Are you cleared to speak to terminated personnel?" He flinched, just a flicker, but it was enough. The glass walls of the building caught the last of the afternoon sun, casting gold lines across his face, like a man already behind metaphorical bars. "It was just an upgrade," he muttered. "No one thought we'd need the manual reboot. We assumed the system would catch up. You deleted me? It was protocol." "No," I said, reaching into my bag again, pulling out a second document, thick with bookmarks and highlighter marks. Protocol is what you follow when you don't know better. I wrote the original failover with CFO approval in 2020. It requires physical authentication, my badge, my biometrics. The AI can't simulate them. You can't simulate them. For a moment, he looked genuinely lost. The kind of lost that only happens when a man realizes he's not in charge of anything that matters. He slumped into the chair across from me. Finance needs payroll unfrozen. HR can't issue contracts. Legal's locked out of everything since the compliance checks won't pass without the Section 6.2 signature key. He rubbed his face. The CFO wants to meet in person. I'm no longer an employee, Trevor, remember? They're offering reinstatement, retroactive. I sipped my coffee. Is that before or after they reissue my parking spot? He gave a half laugh, unsure if he was allowed to. Elise, we need you. I stood, slowly. Let the pause linger, like the end of a song you didn't realize you'd memorized. Then start with an apology, I said. And, next time, read the manual. As I walked away, my phone vibrated. CFO, meeting in 20, executive suite, bring your version. I never deleted anything. They just forgot where I stored it, burned behind me in every frantic whisper. They had erased me from the system, but I was still in every procedure. And some reboots, only I knew how to start, enjoying Elise's quiet revenge. Hit subscribe, because the system hasn't seen anything yet. The elevator ride to the 28th floor was silent. Not the peaceful kind. This was the kind of silence that hummed with tension, like a hard drive one surge away from crashing. The mirrored walls reflected my calm exterior, but underneath, every muscle in me was wired tight. This wasn't just a meeting. This was a recall. When the doors opened, the executive suite felt sterile. Too white, too quiet. Even the windows looked like they'd been scrubbed of personality. But the tension in the air? That was human. That was very real. The CFO stood by the glass, suit immaculate, voice clipped and controlled. A man used to being 10 steps ahead. Today, he was trying not to show he was 10 steps behind. Elise, he said, turning, thank you for coming. I nodded, setting the Section 6.2 folder down on the obsidian gloss conference table like a chess piece. He didn't sit. Neither did I. We're in a complicated situation, he began. I gathered, I said. Payroll's non-functional. Contracts are locked. Manual restart procedures disabled due to unauthorized system overrides. You have a cascade lockdown. He winced, just slightly. How fast can you get us out of it? That depends, I replied. Do you want a patch or a permanent fix? He blinked, as if the idea of a solution that didn't rely on duct tape and hope hadn't occurred to him. Then, after a pause, we'd like to restore your position. With adjustment, senior level. Retroactive? I asked. Cool. He nodded. With bonuses and team oversight. I leaned back slightly, letting the moment stretch. You should know, I said. I don't do oversight without full system access. Logs, Slack, email, archived project folders, including Trevor's deletions. A flicker of discomfort crossed his face, but it passed. Granted. That was the first checkmate. I opened the folder. Inside were 5 printed sheets. The first was the original version of Section 6.2, signed, time-stamped, notarized. The second was the backup boot sequence, triggered only via dual auth tokens stored on separate systems, one of which still required biometric input from an originator class administrator. That was me. The third sheet held the reboot key. I slid it forward. You'll want to key this in precisely, I said. And not from a virtual terminal, physical node only, server B1. You still remember the location? He asked, surprised. I mapped the server room wiring by hand in 2019 when IT kept frying the backups during upgrades. It's in my blood. He gave a slow nod, then surprisingly chuckled. We never should have let them phase out the printed protocols. No, you shouldn't have let Trevor delete the only person who'd memorized them. Outside the door, I heard Trevor's voice, loud, nervous. Sir, if I could just— Not now, the CFO snapped. Then to me, more softly. You'll have discretion to build your own unit. I smiled. Then let's get the system breathing again. We both signed. A few seconds later, I was handed a fresh keycard, level 5 clearance. My profile was reinstated, but I noticed the change. Now I was listed as Administrator Class, Manual Authority Clearance / Legacy Override Lead. Systems didn't forget. They just archived, and today I was the one with the password. The server room was colder than I remembered, an engineered chill meant to preserve uptime and prevent meltdown, both technical and human. Lights blinked in rhythmic patterns like a synthetic heartbeat, and every rack stood like a silent sentinel, humming just below human hearing. I scanned my new badge. Green, welcome back. Past the rows of servers at the far end of the room was Node B1, a terminal most employees didn't even know existed. No remote access, no virtualization, only physical input, the last layer of failsafe. And that was the point. I pulled on the static grounding gloves and connected the reboot dongle, yes, that was its real name, Persection 6.2, into the primary access port. The screen flickered to life, dull and slow, like a sleeping machine not quite ready to wake. Authentication required, biometric plus passcode. I placed my thumb on the reader. It pulsed once. Then I typed patricia.fremont:, legacyca, _06, a name nobody remembered anymore, except the system. She trained me. She warned me this day would come, and in her final review file, she added me as backup override. A whisper of a legacy, waiting in the dark. The system whirred, fans surged, racks blinked in synchronized green. Manual reboot initiated. Syncing modules, restoring payroll, re-establishing legal access keys, cross-validating contract pipelines. The hum became a roar, then it fell silent, just for a beat, and then everything came back online. It wasn't just a restart. It was a resurrection. I exhaled, long and steady. The entire system had folded in on itself like a sleeping animal. Now it was waking, slower, wiser. As I stepped back, a ping came through my new internal channel, CFO. Payroll validated, HR portal restored, contract keys firing green. You're officially a ghost in the machine. Care for a drink tonight? I smirked. Only if it's not in the Zoom bar. On my way out, I passed Trevor in the hall. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. Don't! Just don't! He closed it, maybe for the first time in his career. Back at my desk, yes, mine again, I pulled out an old binder, thick, tabbed, labeled in ink. It held every procedure no one had ever bothered to digitize. I flipped to a page near the back. Contingency Cascade Protocol, Executive Behavior Breach. I smiled to myself. The reboot was done. But the restoration? That was just beginning. By Thursday, the office was breathing again, but differently, like someone who had survived a stroke and now paid attention to every heartbeat. People were whispering in elevators, not about the crash, about me. Elise is back? She never really left. Did you hear she hardwired the reboot from B1? I walked through the halls like an echo of something they thought they could delete. But I wasn't a ghost. I was firmware, quietly embedded, impossible to extract. The CTO passed me in the hallway and gave a sharp nod. No words, just acknowledgement. He knew I'd bypassed layers even he hadn't reviewed in years. In the next all-hands, the CFO made it official. Standing under that horrible fluorescent glare, he tapped his mic once, then said, "As of today, Elise Monroe is reinstated under a new title, Legacy Systems Executive Authority, with full operational autonomy under Section 6.2 protocols. She'll be advising on risk mitigation and continuity planning across departments." There was silence. Then, one by one, people clapped. HR started it, legal followed, even some from payroll. Trevor didn't clap. Later that afternoon, I was summoned into an impromptu sync with HR. "We're reviewing some deletions," said Raya, the HR lead, as she closed the blinds. "Files missing, chats scrubbed, system logs suggest manual overrides, unauthorized but masked as approved by your profile, post-deactivation." I leaned forward. "You're saying Trevor used my digital ghost to commit protocol fraud?" She didn't confirm, but the silence did. "We'd like your assistance mapping what's missing." "Already done," I said, sliding a USB across the table. "Audit trail, compiled offline before they locked me out. Every chat, every deletion, every impersonation." Ria's eyes widened. "Why didn't you—" "I don't trust the cloud," I said with a shrug. "Besides, I knew someone would need the truth eventually." She stared at the USB like it might explode. "And you're okay with this being used? It's time the system purged its own junk files." When I stepped out of the HR office, I didn't go back to my desk. I went to the rooftop, my space, always had been. The wind was different up there, cleaner, unfiltered. You could hear the hum of the building's brain. The city blinked below, unaware that one woman had just rebooted a machine designed to forget her. I wasn't back. I had never left. They just had to remember how to look. The rooftop light shifted with the clouds, soft, deliberate, like even the sky was pausing to listen. Behind me, the access door clicked open. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. "I figured I'd find you here," said the CFO. He stepped closer, jacket unbuttoned, tie loosened. Not the usual armor. "We just received an external audit request. Apparently the system's failure triggered an automated review. They'll be digging into everything." I glanced sideways. "Everything?" He nodded. "Everything, Elise. Every override, every Slack message, every attempt to scrub protocol logs." A gust of wind pushed at his words, but they didn't move me. "Let them dig," I said. "There's nothing I'm afraid of them finding." He studied me for a beat. Trevor might not say the same. Then he shouldn't have tried to bury a legacy system while it was still breathing. His laugh was dry. "I'd offer you his role, you know." "I don't want it." "Why not?" I turned toward him. "Because replacing people isn't how you fix broken systems. You rebuild the architecture. You teach them the value of redundancy. You codify respect." He leaned on the railing next to me. "You think we can still do that?" "I think you don't have a choice." We stood in silence for a moment, watching as a delivery drone buzzed low across the skyline. Below, people rushed through their routines, unaware they were walking across the surface of a quietly transformed company. "You know," he said, "I was against printing Section 6.2 back then. Thought it was archaic, waste of resources." "Paper's not archaic," I said. "It's resilient. It can't be overwritten in a moment of panic. You have to physically destroy it to erase it. That's what terrified them." A pause. "You're dangerous." "No," I said softly. "I'm remembered." Behind us, the building's glow flickered with renewed stability. the heartbeat of Delphi Core, once faltering, now steady, thanks to a protocol no one thought they'd need, and the person they thought they could delete. I took one last breath of rooftop air. Tell legal. I'm ready. Let's formalize the audit response. He nodded. And after? I looked over my shoulder, back at the company that thought it could erase experience with an upgrade. Then, I said, we rewrite the onboarding manual. The legal conference room smelled like cold paper and nervous sweat. 3 attorneys, 2 paralegals, 1 compliance officer, and me, armed with nothing but a binder, a black pen, and memory sharp enough to slice through 6 years of procedural drift. We'll start with the audit triggers, said Maya, legal's lead. The external inquiry focuses on authentication failures and deletion attempts logged under your credentials during your deactivation period. I nodded. Cross-reference that with the shadow access report from Systems Audit. You'll find discrepancies in the timestamp hashes. They tried to mask them, but they forgot something simple. Everyone looked up. Local machine logs don't lie, not if you know where to look. I slid a second folder across the table. Inside, metadata printouts from internal nodes, ones I had backed up on a side server during the early pandemic, when redundancy wasn't fashionable but still necessary. Maya scanned them. Her eyes widened. These show the deletions originated from Trevor's terminal, routed through VPN masking, but his device ID pings on 3 overlapping systems. Exactly. He didn't just delete me, he impersonated me to greenlight the system upgrade. Someone let out a low whistle. I don't need revenge, I said calmly. I need accountability. The difference is paperwork. Another paralegal chuckled under her breath. The rest of the meeting blurred into page turns, initials, version numbers, clause citations. Somewhere in the middle of it all, Maya stopped, turned to me and said, You remember all of this? From memory? Systems live in people, I said. You just forgot which ones. That line hung in the air like the first drop before a thunderstorm. By the end of the meeting, they had enough to initiate a formal investigation into procedural breaches, impersonation, and tampering. HR would be looped, the board notified, not with drama, with documents. Before I left the room, I slipped one final paper onto the table. It wasn't damning. It was foundational. Redundancy reimagined. Protocol design through personnel memory. An essay I wrote years ago, never published, never even shared. Until now. Maya picked it up like a relic. This could change how we onboard leadership. It's meant to. She looked at me. You're not here to restore the system. You're here to rebuild the culture. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. As I walked out, I passed Trevor in the hallway again. This time, he didn't try to speak. He just stepped aside. Smart move. Some documents are heavier than they look. The internal investigation moved faster than anyone expected. By Monday morning, HR had scheduled a company-wide compliance refresher. The invite subject was titled, Section 6.2, When Protocols Are People. I didn't laugh, but I smiled. That same day, the board sent out a formal communication. Clean, professional, detached. Following a review of system override discrepancies and legacy protocol violations, we are implementing new safeguards around access hierarchy and manual reboot authority. We commend Elise Monroe for her instrumental role in restoring core systems integrity. No mention of Trevor by name, but his absence in every conversation after that was louder than any press release. I passed his office once, empty, half-packed. A box of unread manuals sat by the door. One of them, still shrink-wrapped, was the Section 6.2 binder, untouched, fitting. At 2 p.m., I was summoned to the strategy room, a place I had never once been invited to. until now. The CFO greeted me, along with 3 department heads: tech, risk, and operations. The tone was different. Not damage control, not fear, respect. "We want to build something permanent," the risk lead said. "A resilience team, cross-functional, systemic memory keepers. We want you to lead it." I raised a brow. "Why now?" Tech replied. "Because you proved something we've ignored for years. Code doesn't preserve culture, people do." I looked around the table. "And if I say yes?" The CFO leaned in. "Then you'll write the new legacy, on your terms." The offer was real, so was the weight of it, but I had one condition. I want printing rights reinstated across departments, physical documentation, tangible backups, and a procedural knowledge review for all execs. They hesitated. "Your systems crashed because you trusted them too much. You trusted upgrades over understanding. I won't lead another team that assumes memory is digital." The operations head chuckled. "That's going to ruffle some feathers." I stood. "Good. Let's see who flies and who falls." As I walked out, I passed the break room. On the corkboard was a pinned note. Section 6.2, Ask Elise. Handwritten, bold ink, not corporate, human. The system hadn't just rebooted, it had remembered. The first meeting of the new resilience team was held in what used to be an unused archive room, walls lined with file boxes, old hardware, and the faint smell of dry ink and warm plastic. I chose it on purpose. Systems, like people, need to remember where they came from. 12 people sat around the table: engineers, HR leads, compliance officers, even one nervous intern from legal who brought her own binder like a shield. All of them had something in common. They'd been overlooked until the crash. Now, they were legacy. "I'm not here to give you a handbook," I started. "I'm here to build one with you." A few uncertain smiles, a few raised brows. No one spoke yet. "You've all been selected because you knew something the system didn't, or preserved something it tried to forget. This team won't operate on trust. It'll operate on proof. Paper trails, real documentation. Redundancy and memory." The intern finally raised her hand. "Will this be formalized?" "Eventually," I said. "But first, it has to be real." We started small, identifying undocumented procedures that kept departments alive during the blackout. Things like payroll's off-grid batch reconciliation trick, HR's fallback Excel shell for emergency onboarding, a rogue manual restart someone built during a server migration in 2018 and never told anyone about. I wrote each down in black ink. No cloud storage, not yet. By week's end, we had the beginning of something more powerful than code: narrative continuity, a procedural story of survival. And then, during a Friday wrap-up, a surprise. Rhea from HR came in, holding a thick envelope. "Thought you'd want to see this," she said. Inside, a printed commendation from the board, signed by every executive. Not an email, not a Slack thread, paper. I held it in my hands, feeling its weight. After all this time, they'd learned. Real authority doesn't come from visibility. It comes from being the last one standing when the system forgets itself. And I had never forgotten. The team watched me quietly. I looked up. "Let's build a protocol that remembers its people." They nodded, and somewhere deep in the building, server node B1 blinked green, still watching, still waiting. A heartbeat, a backup, a memory. Winter came early that year. The glass of the building was dusted with frost, and from the 28th floor, the city looked like a circuit board dipped in silver. I arrived before the lights were on. The silence was clean, full of potential. In my new office, mine, not borrowed, not reassigned, I pulled a fresh sheet of paper from the tray. No digital dashboards, no blinking alerts, just one line I wrote by hand. What did we forget to remember? It had become the motto of the resilience team. Every week, new entries were added to the archive, forgotten fixes, lost methods, names of people who solved problems without permission. We called it the gray folder. HR hated the name. That made me love it more. The CFO checked in less and less, not out of neglect, out of trust. Systems that once ran blind were now embedded with memory, real human memory. Not simulated, not automated. One day the intern, Sana, knocked softly, holding something behind her back. "I found this in the mailroom," she said, beaming. She handed me a brown, slightly dented envelope. Inside, a framed copy of the original Section 6.2 protocol. Signed, stamped, laminated. Below it, a small note in looping script. "You saved more than payroll. You saved our past. Patricia Fremont." I stared at the signature. It was impossible. Patricia retired years ago. No one had heard from her since, but the system had remembered her too. Somewhere along the line, she must have seen the audit notice, the reboot, the rise. Sana watched me. "What does it mean?" she asked. I smiled, setting the frame on the wall, just above eye level, letting it catch the morning light. "It means," I said, "we weren't deleted, just waiting to be restored." Outside, the city buzzed to life, trams, messages, decisions all sparking across glass towers. And somewhere deep beneath it all, under circuits and credentials and cold server racks, a line of code waited patiently. // if system fails, ask Elise. The legacy wasn't mine alone now, it was shared. And this time, it was built to last.